And so I felt like if I was really going to be honest with myself, and I was going to live my faith out loud, and I was going to live this servant-hearted life, and I was going to try to help other people understand it, and I was asking my staff to think this way, then I ought to put my money where my mouth is. It's not just, you can talk the talk, but to actually stand up there and then walk around the stage and talk it, whole nother level. And so part of it is that, is putting it out there that you're trying to be your authentic self. And if that authentic self is that you love other people fully, unabashedly, then that means we sacrifice, we serve. Then here's another, to your earlier point, here's another opportunity to tell that story and serve, and maybe you just help one person say, oh, I get it. And, and I wish I had gotten it much earlier in my career. I can only imagine maybe what else I could have done to help other people, but I get it now, and I'm trying to double down on it now.
Hey, geniuses, and welcome to the show. Hey, Genius, Make the Connection. I am your host, Dr. Jeannie Snyder. Each week, we bring in genius guests who are going to share with us a little bit about their genius and how they inspire the genius in others. So I invite you to relax here on our podcast couch, take a few minutes, and you're about to meet our genius guest of the day, Chris Clark. Chris is the president of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. Among other roles that he holds, which you're going to hear about today, Chris is an economic developer. He is a speaker. He is a connector of people. He is someone who sees an opportunity and finds the right people and processes to make that happen. Chris today is going to share with us about not only his work at the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, but also that he is an upcoming TEDx speaker, something that he considers a new challenge. So meet today Chris Clark, president of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, here on Hey Genius. And as always, we invite you to subscribe, like, and comment on our show, Hey Genius. If you have a few extra minutes, we'd love a little extra love, and you can write a review of our show wherever you watch or listen to your podcast. Well, hey, geniuses, and welcome to Hey Genius, Make the Connection. We are so glad you're here at the show. And as always, we want you to bring your genius, your ideas to mix with the ideas that you might hear on the show and from our genius guest. I am Dr. Jeannie Snyder, and I'm thrilled that you're a part of our studio audience today here at Rich Hart Global Studios. So without further ado, I'd like for you to meet our genius guest today, and it's Chris Clark, president of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. Hi, Chris. Welcome to the podcast couch.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. I love the set, and it's very comfortable. So thanks for having me in today.
The Rich Hart team does an amazing job here. Awesome. So we just kind of, enjoy pretending like it's our, our living room. So
I feel like it could be like a counseling session. I could lay down if I needed to in a few minutes.
Yeah, I'm not that kind of doctor. Yeah, different kind of doctorate. Okay. So, we're going to just talk about his genius, and so that's another show. So we're so glad you're here, and we have known each other a bit in many different intersections. So how do you remember that we first connected? And I'm afraid it might be a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. I think we're just telling my age. I remember it was a retreat for the Georgia Economic Developers Association.
Oh, that's right. I was going somewhere different. That's right.
And you were facilitating our leadership training.
I was.
And I remember the first thing that we did is you had a box. And you open this, you say, okay, you open the box for 5 seconds or something, you close it, and you have to tell us what's in the box. And I thought, this is the weirdest thing I've ever done.
Who is
but
this
I was
chick?
Super competitive, and I remember diving in, and so that's where I first.
Interesting. I forgot about the magic box. That's what I called it.
So that's how long ago.
Probably that was. And you had to look in the box. We put the lid on, and then you had to remember where things were.
Right.
And what do you remember about that exercise? Like what in the world did that?
I don't know. I think I was very young and competitive.
Yeah,
so
I heard the competitive.
I really wanted to beat the other teams.
You wanted to win.
In the room.
And as I remember, now that I'm going back to that, I had us at a different spot, but that was actually the first. You're right.
Yeah. And so, I was actually in that same facility with that same group not too long ago. But so that's kind of how where I remember you. And then I remember you helping and working and mentoring and using your services in a variety of areas.
A lot. We
when I
work with
first
a lot
started
of
out.
economic developers and chambers of commerce and
Right.
all kinds of leaders like you. So, well, thank you for that memory. And
Yeah.
it's been, we've had interesting intersections in lots of other places
Right.
through Georgia College and through the state of Georgia and
Right.
wandering around the Gold Dome and all kinds of places. So, and so I appreciate that connection. One of the other things that I know we do together is we're both mentors in the GEM program, which is Georgia Educational Mentors.
Right.
And it's sponsored by the Georgia Chamber of Commerce and is in partnership with Georgia College and State
Right.
University. So we also have mentees. And how is that experience for you?
It's fantastic. And this is a program that the Georgia Chamber started with Georgia College over 23 years
It's
ago,
amazing.
if you can believe that.
I mean, that's
And so
amazing.
30, highly motivated sophomores, juniors, seniors every year paired up with CEOs from around the state of Georgia to see what the day's like. And what I've found over the years is I learn as much from them and what they're thinking
absolutely.
and how they're entering the job market. And particularly for the last several years, I've just had just incredible mentees. I've hired former mentees,
Yes.
a couple before.
We
and
appreciate it.
yeah, I had one spent the day with me just last week,
that's
and
cool.
just fantastic. And just seeing these young men and women as they go on their career path is just, I don't know, it's just so motivating. And then to follow up after they've been married or after they've got that, or have them call you and say, I really don't like my job. I'm ready for something different. Can we talk about it? I mean, how wonderful is that to get to have even that little bit of influence on someone else, just to serve them that way.
That is so cool when they come back around and you're like, wow. And they'll say, I remember when I first saw you. I remember when I first met you, and it makes it's such a rewarding experience. And you're right,
Right.
they teach us. In fact,
yeah.
in a couple of days, my mentee, Maggie Malcolm's going to be sitting where you're sitting.
Oh,
So
fun.
she's my gym mentee for that. So she'll be joining us talking about another project that we're doing together. So
Cool.
tell me, when you're working with, whether it is a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, corporation in Georgia. So we met doing economic development. We met working with people who bring the business to Georgia.
Right.
And who knew, fast forward, you'd be president of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce. And so in a much larger way, you're still obviously bringing businesses to Georgia, helping build Georgia, helping make us a state that is attractive to people. You have already talked about education connections, economic development connections, business connections, university connections. How did all those intersections come together for your life to send you on this trajectory? And if you were going to talk about one of those intersections, like when you started kind of moving a different direction, what would you name that street intersection? What would be on those two street signs at that intersection?
I think it would actually be this term economic development, which for me, I didn't know what that was. I mean,
Yeah, you didn't major in it in college or
no
anything.
one ever tells you what that
Yes.
is. I knew what a Chamber of Commerce was, but I didn't know
Right.
what they did, right?
Right.
Maybe they put on a parade, that's great.
Correct.
But I do remember it was actually in a graduate class at Georgia College. And I was working 3 jobs, going to school at night, didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to serve. I knew I wanted to make a difference. I didn't know what that would look like. And I had 2 guys come in to speak to our class. They were bringing all these different government agency people in over like the course of
so
a
that
week.
you could meet them, experience them,
Yeah, and just
find out what's out there.
And these 2 guys started talking about economic development, and all of a sudden my brain started exploding. I was like, it was like click, 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 and they finished, and I just walked out of class. I mean, class was still going on. They finished. They were leaving. I said, "Hey guys, can I buy you a Coke?"
Yeah.
And we sat in this little break room, and I said, "Tell me exactly what you do, how you do it," and they explained it to me. And all of a sudden I thought, okay, this is where government comes in. This is where business comes in. This is how you help your community. This is how you help your schools. Everything, if you want to make your community better, if you want to help your state, if you want to help other people, this is a cool way to do it, but it's not a way that anyone ever explained to me. And then literally within, 6 months, I was running a little local chamber of commerce and doing economic development. It was that meeting
Fayette
that
County?
night. No, it was Hawkinsville,
Hawkinsville
Pulaski
first.
County.
That's right. Hawkinsville
Yeah, so
first.
those 2 guys, and the cool thing is one of those 2 guys is still one of my dear, dear friends, lives down the street, goes to church with us,
I love
teaches my
it.
son
I
in
love
Sunday
it. Who's
school.
that? Let's give him the shout
Is
out.
it Brian Cardoza, who's
Oh,
just so
yes.
incredible, as,
Yes.
his dad.
Right.
Georgia College guy too. So
Yes.
just incredible.
Georgia College is getting a lot of hits today.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
is good. So that intersection came together of all those things, and you didn't even know what to call it,
I had no idea. I kind of knew because I was working on some projects in Macon at the time.
right?
And I was like, I like doing this. I like bringing people together. I like convening people. I like helping people. But what's the bigger picture, right?
So when
Where
you're
did you
saying this
maximize
is
the
what I want to
impact?
be when I grow up, economic development was not, one of, one of those things.
Who knew?
Because we didn't know. So
The interesting thing, though, is that I grew up in this little town called Fitzgerald, Georgia, in South Georgia.
Fitzgerald.
But the cool thing was, that little town was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because we had recruited this huge manufacturing plant, and all of a sudden my buddies had jobs. And what we knew is the chamber did that. And my buddies' dads had jobs, and new buddies moved to town.
I love that.
But I didn't ever know exactly what that was. I just knew that's something to be proud of, and my dad's proud of it, and the community's proud of it, and this is a good thing. And downtown's doing better now. And so that was always kind of stuck in the back of my head. So when those two guys got up to talk, I was like, yeah. And so it kind of all just super connected in that moment in that classroom.
I love this, the intersections, the connections, and the things that then, you developed into becoming an economic developer,
Right.
And a chamber president, and all of the things. It's interesting when you went back to Fitzgerald, Georgia. My connection with Fitzgerald, Georgia is one of my college roommates at Georgia College, actually two of them, which were twins, Lane and Lisa Treese. And they, when I began to learn about all the communities in Georgia when I was at Georgia College, by first knowing people.
Right.
Then I worked for the University of Georgia, and I remember Claude McBride, who used to be our Associate Director of Alumni Relations. We would go through, and he would get me to memorize the 159 counties in Georgia as we drove, and what the county seats were,
Right.
and who I knew where. And to this day, when someone says a county, I'll go, "Oh, is the county seat still?"
Right, yeah.
And you just think about that. Those are some of the grassroots things that help us not only build business, your career, et
Right.
cetera, but it's also where we find those connections throughout Georgia.
Absolutely.
So let's fast forward.
Okay.
So now you have worked in local chambers, you've worked in with economic development throughout the state, and take us through, what were those next street signs you passed? What exits did you pass on the way to the Georgia Chamber of Commerce? Where else were you
So
working?
it was interesting. So I did economic development in a couple of communities, Hawkinsville and then Fayette County. And then Georgia elected a new governor.
Yes.
His name was Sonny Perdue. And he was a good friend, a mentor. And he asked me to come work for him in state government as Deputy Commissioner of Economic Development. So I spent 4 years literally traveling all over the world, selling Georgia, setting up offices all over the world for our state. And I thought, I can do this. I can do this for the rest of my life. There's adrenaline. I'm making a difference. I'm seeing, the
Sure.
people go to work. And then I had a son. And all of a sudden, that idea of being gone 3 weeks a month,
And travel.
it lost all appeal, almost like it melted away overnight. And I went in to see the governor, and I said, I don't want to do this.
Wow.
I'm going to go do something else. And he says, no. I want you to go do some other stuff for me. And I said, well, I'm happy to do that, but my family has to come first. That has to be my priority. And he goes, great. And that's why you're going to go do this. And so I went and ran this state organization called the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, which did land conservation, energy, and water work.
Wow.
And then I went from there, I was there briefly, and then I was commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources and served that organization for, 2 or 3 years, and then was recruited to the chamber from there.
That is so cool.
So
tell us, we don't want to take for granted when we come here, you speak chamber all day long, you speak
Sure.
economic development all day long. For our studio audience that is learning about this interesting intersection of ideas and jobs and things,
Right.
what do we as Georgians, how do we get into, or is anyone working with their state chamber of commerce, what can we do to help at this intersection? What can we do to help the state of Georgia grow responsibly, business. I mean, those of us who are entrepreneurs
Sure.
get it. What is it that the chamber does, for our state? How can we get involved?
Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, every chamber's different, right? There's no two are built
Correct.
alike. And we have a great partnership with our local chambers, and we encourage businesses to be involved at the local level. But when we talk about what we do, we put it into some buckets. One, we're conveners. We bring people together, ask them to solve problems. We look at big issues. We network with each other. My big event of the year has almost 3,000 people at it every year. That's a lot of people to network with.
So work the crowd. That takes on a whole new meaning, right?
Then we have another bucket where we provide services. So we're there to serve small businesses, help them with a variety of different services. But really, I think where the rubber meets the road and where people that care about this should engage is we're looking 30, 40, 50 years in the future about what policies we need, how to invest in infrastructure so that you can drive to work safely and you can move your goods and products around, or how do we help with health care? And then we translate that into action at the Georgia Capitol or in Washington by advocating for businesses. And so, we represent 50,000 businesses all over the state of Georgia, small businesses like yours, every chamber in Georgia. But at the end of the day, you have to be involved. It's the chamber family. If you care about your community, if you care about growing your business, then you ought to be a member of a chamber somewhere, right? There's one to fit your
local
flavor.
chamber, state chamber, et
Right,
cetera.
binational chamber, whatever that might be. But at the end of the day, it's about making those connections, being part of the same team, and being able to stand there with the guy from the trucking industry and the guy from the banking industry and a woman from this industry saying, these three issues matter to us, and we need to fix transportation in Georgia because 30 years from now, that's going to matter. We need to improve education now because that's my future workforce as well as my kid too, right?
Right.
So there's a selfish piece of it.
Sure.
But no, it's when you connect, can convene and bring people together that you actually start moving the needle and you start making a difference.
That's huge. That's an amazing, genius connection there of those things. And I don't consider the thinking of your son as the selfish part, because who's going to be running these for us later?
Sure.
Who's learning from us now? So I want you to go back to that night, whenever your public administration class was. When
it was at night because I worked 3 jobs and went to school at
if
night.
I remember, top of Parks Hall. So you're looking down at public administration classes there. So you are. You're there and you saw these guys and you saw something that attracted you there and you made the ask.
Right.
You're going back to Georgia College, I understand. There's a big event coming up in a few weeks, and it's actually this week, right? Not the Masters. Another big event.
That's coming.
That would be
That's a week and a half.
That would be TEDx Georgia College. I understand that you also made an ask, or at least an application, to apply to be a part of TEDx Georgia College, which I'm volunteering for as well.
Right.
But you're actually one of the speakers on the stage. What? Okay, you've got all this. You got a busy job. You got your family. You're doing so much. Why be a TEDx speaker? What's this challenge for you?
So I give about 150 to 60 speeches a year.
Wow.
I mean, it's 3 to 4, 5 a week, every week.
Hazard of the job.
Yes, and I talk about business and politics and economy and all those boring things with lots of statistics.
Yep.
But
and there's probably a rubber chicken dinner around you somewhere.
Somewhere, everywhere. But several years ago, and particularly after coming out of COVID, we really doubled down at our office with our staff on culture, on service, on thinking differently about how we do what we do. And I have several Georgia College graduates that work for us, and a couple of them came to me and they said, Georgia College is doing a TEDx and we think you should go do it.
Oh, your team came and said, hey,
yes,
Chris,
I didn't know we were doing it.
We see you on the stage.
Well, they wanted me, they didn't want me to come and do my normal, they hear that speech 150 times a year.
Normal.
They don't, they didn't think
Please
TEDx,
don't give the boring speech, Chris.
But they came and said, you should go talk about culture and service. You need to tell that story. And
How interesting to be invited by your team to tell the story.
Here's 2 24, 25-year-olds that come into the office, and you're like, okay, what's wrong now? What do you want? And they said, we think you need to do this. And I said, okay, I'll fill out the application and see if there's anything worthwhile there to share. And I'm excited about it. It's very different. It's talking about me which I don't do and I don't like to do, versus talking about the economy and what we need to do as a state, or what we work on together.
I will offer another option that because TEDx is about ideas worth sharing. So
Right.
it is you're bringing your idea to the stage, but it is to do what you do on a normal basis of inviting people to think differently, to
Right.
take action, to connect ideas maybe that they hadn't thought about.
Right.
And so in a big sense, it's that. So what have already been the learnings, the unexpected surprises when you're trying to now take, I'll call it your genius, and putting it into a TEDx talk? What's been hardest part, surprising part? What have you already learned? Because, it's Friday. You're going to be doing this Friday.
Thanks for the pressure.
Feeling nervous? I'm so glad you're here. He only had a few minutes.
I really, and it's so funny, and I'm just blessed that I've never been nervous in front of a group. I mean, never, because I've been speaking since I was a kid. But this, and I always plan things out, and I practice, and I do all the groundwork. But this is telling a different type of story.
It is.
And it's a much more personal story. And so that's been difficult for me to wrap my head around.
Yes.
The practice is fine. I get it. The memorizing is fine. I get it.
But we don't simply memorize. It's a
we
different
don't, but it's
thing.
putting yourself out there in a way. And, it was funny as I applied and I went back and I told a couple of the staff, I said, hey, I got it. They were super excited, but it was funny because the day that I told them we got it was the day we had literally as a staff meeting had watched the TED talk that day.
Oh, interesting.
Right? And that reminded me, I was like, oh, I should go tell them that I get to do that.
Yes.
So we use TED. It's been great for us. Whatever we need to share with our staff, it's just part of the DNA. And so it's very cool, but it's different, and it's a little outside my comfort zone. Just like maybe sitting here and having this conversation is a little outside my comfort zone.
He's like, what am I going to do here? Okay, good. Well, it is but you're out there. Like you said, you're out there and taking that step. But what an amazing step you're taking, because your direct reports, two people that watch you, said, Chris, you need to do this. Yeah. And you took that step. You could have said, I talk enough.
Right.
You took that step. What made you take the advice of those two folks when they asked you to do something?
I think, listen, and just being, very personal, that talk is about servant-heartedness.
That talk, meaning your TEDx.
My TEDx talk. And that's what we talk, so much in trying to teach my staff. And I didn't always get it. And so I've really leaned into my faith over the last, however many years now to really try to understand what that servant-heartedness looks like. It's more than servant leadership. It's more than just being a server. It's more than just serving. And so I felt like if I was really going to be honest with myself, and I was going to live my faith out loud, and I was going to live this servant-hearted life, and I was going to try to help other people understand it, and I was asking my staff to think this way, then I ought to put my money where my mouth is. It's not just, you can talk the talk, but to actually stand up there and then walk around the stage and talk it, whole nother level. And so part of it is putting it out there that you're trying to be your authentic self. And if that authentic self is that you love other people fully, unabashedly, then that means we sacrifice, we serve. Then here's another, to your earlier point, here's another opportunity to tell that story and serve. And maybe you just help one person say, oh, I get it. And, and I wish I had gotten it much earlier in my career. I can only imagine maybe what else I could have done to help other people. But I get it now, and I'm trying to double down on it now.
Thank you for helping us get it. Yeah. And we'll look forward to hearing your talk at TEDx Georgia College on March 24th. It's so interesting to me. You've come full circle today. You've just told us you started with a story about two people came into a room, and you said, I want to hear more of that. And you bought them a Coke, and you sat down. And what brings you to this room today is two people came to you and said, I want to hear more of that. That's full circle. That's genius. Thank you for being here today and bringing that story. And there's so much more we could talk about, but we'll call it a wrap today. But I thank you so much for being on Hey Genius. And tell the studio audience, how can they get in touch with you? How can they follow you and learn more about Georgia Chamber of Commerce, Chris Clark? All the above.
They can follow me on Twitter is probably the best way, or to reach out through the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, gachamber.com.
And we will have those things in the show notes too, of how you can connect with Chris Clark, president of the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and see his TEDx talk from TEDx Georgia College soon as it goes live. We thank you today for being on our podcast couch with us. We thank you for bringing your genius. We hope that you're walking away with an idea of maybe what you want to be when you grow up, or how you want to grow the genius of someone else. Thank you for being with us at Hey Genius. We always appreciate your subscribing, liking, commenting, and if you've got time, to write a review for Hey Genius, Make the Connection, wherever you listen or watch shows or podcasts. So we'll talk to you soon, geniuses. For now, take your ideas. I hope they're worth spreading.